How's everybody doing today? This is Mark Brody back here with another episode of Coffee Talk with Brohawk. And today I am so glad to have Justin Robbins with me as my guest. Justin, how you doing?
Mark, I'm good. Although I realized I normally have coffee in the afternoon, which is when we're recording this. I don't have my coffee with me. I'm going to drink it
Oh no.
after our conversation. So I feel like I'm doing it wrong from the start, Mark, but I'm glad to
Well,
be here.
if it's as warm as it is out there as it is here. I mean, we're in the 80s. We're probably going to be close to 90 today. So it's not a coffee weather in the afternoon.
I try to not like discriminate when I will and won't have my coffee, and I'm with you. I won't stand up and embarrass myself, but I'm wearing the bow tie with shorts today, shorts and flip flops, because it is also warm here. So
Nice.
I can understand that loud and clear.
Oh man. But hey, it's always the right weather for iced coffee, in my opinion. But
That's fair. That's fair.
that's what I'm talking about. Well, hey Justin, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing these days.
Yeah, of course, Mark. So my name's Justin Robbins. I'm based in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I don't know if it's a lifer or a mutt of the customer experience industry. My career has spanned kind of a little bit of everything at this point. Started as an agent, worked through a number of different roles in hospitality and in retail and even catalog sales at one point, which not too fond of when I look back in that point of my career. But I love this art of how do we understand and serve customers really well, and have just been really fortunate for a long time to get to do that in a number of different ways. Today, I do that by working with the team at UJET as their senior director of corporate communications and evangelism. And the way I think of that is it's really about how do we best understand and tell the story of what they're doing to help customer experience professionals succeed.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I keyed in on something you just said, the art. This business is truly an art. I mean, every company kind of does things a little bit different, but with a brushstroke here or a brushstroke there, you can really paint a much different picture for your customers. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I try to be intentional about the words that I use. And one of my biggest observations is where people get stuck is so often in these either kind of self-created or, a business or a leader creates this kind of rigid structure so often that we think we have to operate within. And when we lose our ability to bring finesse and creativity and curiosity to our work, when we lose that, I think we lose the essence of what's really great about customer experience. So I do think it is in art. We've got to bring that creative touch, if you will, to understanding and serving customers.
And something that's got to be practiced every day. It's never perfected. It's always practiced.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, I've known you for a few years now, and you've been recognized as an ICMI top 25 thought leader again in 2023. What does that type of recognition mean for you? And is it something that I know it's not a goal for the recognition is not necessarily a goal, but the work is that a driver for you?
So I think recognition like that does two things for me, Mark. One is it um, causes me to hold the whether it's content that I'm putting out or things that
Mhm.
I'm studying. Um, it forces me to put it through a lens of what's going to be helpful to the people that I have the opportunity to serve, way more than what do I just want to do and write about. I guess the best way to put it is it forces me to be as selfless as I can in the again content that I create or things that I'm studying. That's part one of it for me. The other part, and I mean this in the best way, is I look at that list and I try to learn from people who aren't on that list, because what happens often that I've noticed in our industry is like those lists start to become a bit of an echo chamber. And while everybody who appears on that list is doing really great and really amazing work, it also represents hundreds and thousands of people that are doing really amazing, really great work that aren't being talked about. And that is just, again, when that comes out, that's kind of my nudge to say, this is great. These people are doing amazing things, and a lot of them are friends, frankly. But who else is doing really, really great work? And how can we find those stories and tell them so that next year that list starts to look a little bit different? Because frankly, like, I hope I'm always relevant, but I hope I'm not always on that list, and that there are other really, really great people that earn that spot.
I love that, Justin. I mean, you know, the work that you do is not ego driven. You're truly trying to serve the community, in a very broad sense. And that's one of the things that I've noticed about you in every conversation that we've ever had is it's all about um, creating relevancy that supports what people are doing, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to go out and just write something, and I'm going to just do it for my purposes, and it's not like that. And definitely a true student of the industry.
Well, I mean, there's two things that are, at least for me, truths to that. One is, like, every single one of us is, of course, pursuing some level of self-interest. And
Mhm.
I heard someone recently who said that their gut check is, at least 80 to 90% of their intent is pure, like they know they're never going to get to 100%. That's just, let's be
Yes.
honest with ourselves. Since that was a reminder for me. It's like, okay, this is right. If we can at least, I think all of us do that check of like, are we doing this completely for ourselves? Or are we really trying to serve others? The other part of it, and this is maybe just because I get frustrated when I see people that are clearly just out to promote themselves, and it's not about helping others, reach their
Mhm.
pinnacle. It's about that individual trying to take and grab as much as they can. And I don't know, it just like, it does make me angry. And I don't know. I've just seen people get burned by those types of, leaders. No, I don't even know that I want to call them leaders. People that just amplify for the sake of amplifying themselves. So that's the other thing. It frustrates me when I see that. So if I can be a little bit louder and a little bit better aligned with helping people succeed than the next person, then I hope I'm doing it right.
One of the, I love that. And you mentioned, you have several friends on the list as well. A lot of people on that, on the ICMI top 25 list are people I see you interacting with online, like, consistently. And while it's an echo chamber, one of the things that I've also noticed about that list is you're all feeding off one another to try and take the CX game to another level, to always try and iterate and improve, and a lot of respect there. I mean, it's a truly lifelong practice. So
Absolutely.
so when it comes to customer experience as a whole, let's kind of pivot here a little bit. What do you see as the primary foundational components of a strong CX program?
I want to approach this question two ways, because I see it as the same foundation, but I'm going to call it two different things.
Okay.
The first was actually, so I had the opportunity. This is like how small the world is.
Mhm.
As I mentioned, I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I was on a webinar not that long ago. And following the webinar, someone messaged me on LinkedIn, and they're like, "Hey, I'm in Wilmington too." And it turns out this person is they were actually a featured contributor with HDI, which
Yep.
for people who run support centers are maybe familiar. Anyway, super small world. They're right here. So
Yes.
we got together for coffee this week, and when I saw that you wanted to talk about this question, I had to laugh a little bit, because this is when customer experience nerds get together for coffee, apparently this is what we also like to talk about in real life too. And to me, the what do successful customer experience programs do right? What do they all have in common? I think the first thing is a balanced approach to people, process, and technology. And those pillars are not new, and they are so often forgotten, or one is over prioritized. And this isn't unique to contact centers or customer experience programs, or really any type of business. The pendulum's always swinging one way or another. And right now, you don't have to go far to see that the pendulum is swinging really, really hard toward technology. And there are some great things about technology, and I know you and I are going to talk about that more in a little bit, but they have a balanced approach, and they understand that it's not reliant on just one thing. It's not about a great tool. It's not about a great process. It's not about great people. So that's the first attribute. Something that I think is really well aligned with that and kind of layers on top of it is they are disciplined in how they define and think about the idea of customer experience within their organization. I use this phrase often. They operate from a shared or a common language. Everybody understands what they mean when they use the term and what the vision for that is. When they have a really clear understanding and vision of customer experience, the second thing that you see them do really well is they operationalize it with excellence. And this is where those things about people, process, technology start to come in, is they understand the inner workings of whatever their world is, and how each piece is a domino that sets off the next. So they are great relationship builders. They're looking across functions. They're looking across their organization to really understand and build a cohesive story. The third part about that then is how they define and measure success. So the metrics that they're using within their organization, how they're interpreting and analyzing all of the data that's being generated throughout a customer's journey with them. Then when they're doing those things, they're able to interpret and act on it well. And that just then begins to feed this cycle. I often use the see, do, get diagram. If people are familiar with the paradigm, the way we see something affects the actions that we take, which then drives the outcomes that we receive. And it becomes a cycle. So that's really when I think about it, without saying, hey, they always do a voice of the customer program and it always has three, forget that.
Yes.
They balance to people, processing, technology, and then the way that they're perceiving the work is clear. The processes they're putting in place are well defined, and the approach they take to measure it is effectively helping them understand and act on what's happening in their business.
I love it. I love it. There's a one of my favorite authors. I'm gonna plug him here real quick. Is a guy by the name of Jones Laughlin, who's also in North Carolina as well, and he has a book. It's one of those motivational parables, called Juggling Elephants. And as you described the three pillars, a CX leader really has to be the ringmaster in a three-ring circus, to be able to balance out the people, processes, and technology, make sure they're all aligned, they're executing as each of them are designed to execute.
Absolutely.
Not trying to do more, not trying to do less, but really be able to um, uh, to just make sure that everything is in a continual state of motion and improvement, and nobody's getting out of line. And in Jones' book, I mean, he talks more about um, on the individual basis. You have to have your three personal rings. Personal, professional, and spiritual. All three of those align. And when one gets out of whack, throws everything else out as well. But CX is, I mean, very much the same thing. Um, and I see a lot of organizations, and I'm sure you have as well over your career, that will definitely prioritize. Hey, here's a silver bullet of technology, and it's going to do everything. I mean, when I came into the industry IVR was going to go ahead and take over the world, and there were going to be no agents. To let you know how long I've been in the industry as well. But I was talking to Fred Stacy, back a few months ago, and great technologist, and we were talking about how companies will often lean into technology to be the silver bullet for CX. Um, what role in not just being balanced, but additionally, what role do you see technology being as part of a good CX program?
Yeah, it's certainly an evolving one.
Yeah.
Um, I I think about this technology is so broad, and there's so many interesting evolutions that are happening within different types of technologies right now. That there are a lot of roles that I see technology playing uh, across the customer experience. When we think about how has our interactions, if we go into a brick and mortar location, how has that changed at the grocery
Oh
store for the
yeah.
percentage of aisles that are now self-service versus assisted? If we think about restaurants, how frequently are you interacting with a tablet instead of someone to take your order, or an app?
Mhm.
And that, from the in-person experience, has manifested all sorts of things in terms of self-service as we think about maybe traditional contact center interactions and all this. So a couple big themes that I think technology is going to continue to play a role in, and just gets me really excited when I think about the potential here. One is enabling people to serve themselves better. And notice I didn't say customers, because I think this plays into how we enable our workers to do their jobs better. 100% how we can
Yes.
enable our customers, how they can interact with our brands in better, more intuitive
Mhm.
and friction-free ways. And I think an executive standpoint and from a strategic standpoint, there's some really cool things that we could be doing with tools to surface and better just understand the nature of what's happening in our businesses in a way
Mhm.
that's just maybe too complicated or too time consuming for us to do today. So I think a lot around just helping humans have better experiences, whether it's in the work that they do or the services that they're trying to receive. I think that's a big part of it. Um, so yeah, part of it plays around self-service, part of it plays around intelligence. I think the growing and gosh, I was starting to work on some presentations for this year, and I had to go back and I looked at one from 10 years ago, and it was talking about big data and what's happening with big data, and how do our businesses get a handle on big data. And I don't think we're there yet, but that's part of where I'm increasingly thinking about how can technology step in and really give us better insights about what's happening throughout the context of the customer experience. Because if right now a CX professional is a ringleader for trying to orchestrate these things, how do we get technology to be a ringleader for all of our data?
Yeah.
So that's something that I think about. Then there's all sorts of like just ways that we can evolve the service experience, whether we look at attempts that have been made to use drone delivery or autonomous vehicles. Yeah, there's so much that I could talk about here. I just think it's going to continue to play a role, but catch the undertone of everything that I said is that role is to augment. It's not to replace all things in
Yes.
every um, kind of in every place.
Going into like a grocery store, as an example, and you talked about some of the lot more, you see a lot more self-service lines, but the lines that are always most packed are always the ones with a cashier and a bagger, because people still need that human experience, um, to help them navigate. If there's a question that just comes out, something doesn't ring up properly, they're always going to need a person. And I think grocery stores, are a great example, or a great analogy for the way the contact center world operates. There are certain things that, small questions, so under 15 items, go through the self-serve. You're probably not going to have too much of an issue there. But if you have a larger basket of stuff, a week or a month's worth of groceries, you probably want to get a person involved just in case there's a curveball thrown at you. Um, I mean, just the whole queuing methodology, or Erlang C, going back to original Erlang C, is based off of grocery store queuing.
Right.
So I love how you bring in some of the other aspects of customer experience that's not just rooted in the contact center. It's rooted in everything that we do.
Well, and that's I will stay off my soapbox for a minute.
No, please don't.
But I'm gonna get close to it. Look, if there was one thing that I would, if people always, I don't know that people always ask the question. I don't know why I said it that way. If you ever been asked the question, if you could get into a time machine and go back to any point in time, like what would you do and why? Yeah. I would find out where this moment happened, that there's an assumption that customer experience is and only means contact center. And we see this play out at conferences. We see it play out in content that's being created. We see it play out in how some people study the space, and they say customer experience, and what they really mean is contact center. And so all of this other stuff that is, arguably, depending on what your job is, more or as important, that is part of the customer experience, totally gets left out of it. So yeah, that's probably a conversation for another day, but I think it's important for us, no matter where you're at, if you think you're a customer experience professional, unless your job is owning the swath of all the customer experience-y things in your land, you are just a part of it. And so you need to understand all of those other parts of it, which is why I try to use examples that aren't just, hey, here's about a contact center because of customer experience, because that's not, like, if we're telling ourselves that that's the whole story when it comes to customer experience, we've got the story wrong.
Justin, I love the way that you just went through that, because my wife is a product owner, a product manager, and I'll often overhear her talking about user experience. What's the end user experience? And I'm thinking to myself, the principles that you're putting into an agile product development process are the same principles that contact centers put into customer experience development. You still have to understand the journey. You still have to understand all of the different bits and pieces that that customers are going to focus on, even when you don't think they're going to focus on those things. So yeah, you and I could geek out for hours and days on this stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if people ever want to just listen to us rant, we could probably set up a
Yes.
live and just complain for a long time. I'm sure so many people would.
I agree. We may have to do that live and with adult beverages at some point. So
All right, that's fine. That's fine. I'm
excellent. So I know you've been some of the evangelism that you do really focuses on metrics and metrics that are important to drive contact centers. So a lot's changed over the years, but what metrics should contact center leaders be focused on today, and have these evolved through the years? Has the pandemic elevated some and reduced the importance of others? What are your thoughts there?
Cool. I have the reason I have a love affair with metrics is because I think it's really important for us to clearly understand what success looks like and what it takes for us to get there. And the only way we can do that are by metrics. And metrics get a bad rap because they are often misunderstood. They're frequently misused and poorly interpreted.
Yes.
that, so to start, like, metrics is like, seems like a weird thing to care about. Like, that's the first part of metrics for me. And I think it's important to answer your question of have they changed and evolved, because if you and I were working together in any capacity around like figuring out your metrics, I would ask, is the way that you define success today different than the way you defined success yesterday or a year ago or 10 years ago? And if it is, then yeah, your metrics have probably changed. If it hasn't, then maybe they haven't. But what I have to believe is that there are nuances that evolve. And what I won't go into today are all of the categories of metrics and how, you know, some are better indicators of success than others. One that I often use as an example for contacts that must be handled as they arrive. So think of this like an inbound phone call, or if you're doing real-time web chat, you would want to use a service level metric for that type of measure. So X percentage of contacts answered in Y seconds. I see businesses still use average speed of answer as their metric there. And it's not that average speed of answer is bad necessarily, but it's not as accurate. And because I have observed and know that many contact centers struggle with forecast accuracy, it begs the question of why is the forecast bad? And then you start to look into, well, what drives the forecast? It's like, oh, well, we've got all of these fuzzy numbers. If we can start to bring those numbers into kind of a better a view and have more clarity around them, then everything else down it happens well. So what are some of the changes that I see at a high level? Of course, the channel mix that customers are using today has evolved, but still those channels are really broken into two. What are the contacts that have to be handled as they arrived, and what can be handled with a delayed response? So the basic metrics around how do we make sure that we're responsive and accessible in channels haven't necessarily changed. If you're watching this, have your customers maybe wanted service faster than you've provided historically? That could have changed. And so maybe you need to look at improving your service level objectives or things like that. But again, maybe not. Maybe they're just as tolerant as they were before. Lots of people like to speculate how consumer behavior has changed. But as somebody who personally looks at a lot of numbers around this all the time, I'm not fully convinced that customers are any less patient today than they were before the pandemic. By and large. Yep. Right? Not necessarily the case for everyone, but might be. One of the things that I don't see enough people looking at that I think is important as we think about the role of automation and self-service and improving is better understanding where self-service is failing and people are having to move to another channel. Often those failed self-service attempts are not captured in first contact resolution measurement. Because people then look at when they actually talk to an agent to start measuring FCR. So understanding the effectiveness of self-service. I also think something that I introduced a couple of years ago is this idea of propensity to pivot. And what it really means is for a given channel or for a given contact type, what is the percentage and the likelihood that they have to move, they have to pivot to another channel? It's not just an abandonment because they don't go away, they go somewhere else. And an example might be, hey, I had a water heater break and flood my basement. You know nothing about that, Mark, right? Exactly. And I try to go online to help myself and it doesn't work with self-service. So now I have to maybe chat or call in. Well, if I'm that business, I would want to know what percentage of people with busted water heaters attempt to chat in. More importantly, what are they trying to learn? Where does that self-service attempt not work? And then where are they most prone to go to next? And there's a lot of things then that we can do as a result of that to improve the self-service experience, to maybe if we notice that Mark's going down the path of, ineffectively resolving his issue, how do we interject? And if we know that people are most likely to call, maybe we attempt it with a phone call, maybe we attempt it with, an agent kind of moving into the chat in real time. So there's a lot of things that can evolve there. And I am super passionate about it, but
as you were talking through all that, Justin, I'm thinking, you know, customer retention is a big part of that, or is a byproduct of all of that. So I wonder if there's like a propensity to pivot threshold that companies start seeing um, um, a drag on customer retention.
Yeah, I
You
think
know,
there's so much that could be explored here. One of the
Mhm.
things that I love from Nate Brown is he talks about this idea of fighting friction points in the organization, and those types of things, those are friction points.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, so metrics for me, really is, I guess, to go back and try to answer your question, how has it evolved and how am I thinking about it? I would say if you're listening to this and you're trying to figure out where and might have your metrics evolved, I would say look at what you're measuring today, and it should really do one of two things. It should either be a predictive measure of success,
Yep.
and quick analogy is if you're trying to lose weight, a predictive measure of success is how many times you exercise, what you eat or don't eat. Those are
Mhm.
predictive measures. So what are the predictive measures in your contact center that drive your outcome? And then your other metrics should be reflective of whether or not you achieve success. So in the example of weight loss, it's stepping onto the scale. And so go back. What does success look like? How will you know it when you see it in your business? And then are your metrics helping you get there, or reflect back on whether or not you've achieved success? If they're not doing that, then 100% time for your metrics to change.
Love it. I love it. Um, Justin, like we said, you and I could talk about this stuff, for hours on end, and I hope at some point in time in 2023 we get that chance.
That'd be
Uh,
awesome.
uh, so I know we were getting kind of long here, and out of respect for your time, let's go ahead and hit up the speed round. How does that sound?
Let's do it.
All right. So I want to know first thing, and I think our viewers would love to know this as well. What fact about Justin would people be surprised to learn about you?
I think it's getting less surprising now because it's my fun fact. So maybe I have to find a new fun fact. But I am a certified competition barbecue judge through the Kansas City Barbecue Society.
Nice, nice. All right, now I got to ask then, what's the best barbecue? Kansas City, Carolina, or Texas?
Oh, this is like picking favorite children. I think they
Yeah.
all have really great things about them.
Uh-huh.
I While Carolina barbecue is growing on me, if there were three barbecue joints lined up, I'd be most likely to go to the Texas barbecue joint first.
There you go. When you're down here, it's on me. How's that?
I like it, Mark.
Excellent. So, what is your ideal off the grid location?
It is either hiking on a mountain with no cell service, or it's like 10 miles off the coast with no cell service. So mountains or the water, those are my two favorite places.
Excellent, excellent. Something about this time of year, it's Girl Scout cookie season. So, what's your favorite?
Samoas.
Samoa's, really, the coconuts.
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
it's more of the
great.
caramel and the chocolate for me.
There you go. There you go.
But
And
I'm not gonna, like, if you put a box of anything in front of me, I will eat it. Let's just be clear. That mailing address, by the way, is now.
we got you hooked up. And well, if someone wants to learn more about the work you do, or just want to like sit there and just have a conversation with you, I mean, you're first of all, you're one of the most approachable people in this industry, and I appreciate that. And uh, if someone wants to learn more about you, have a conversation with you, how could they get in contact with you?
Yeah, Twitter and LinkedIn is Justin, the letter M like Mike Robbins, Robbins. And my email address is justin@justinmrobbins.com.
Awesome, awesome. Justin, thank you very much. I appreciate you spending part of your afternoon with me, and just having this conversation. I look forward to the next time we get to have this conversation in person.
Awesome, Mark. Me as well. Thank you so much.
All right. You have a great rest of the day.
Thanks. You too.
All right,